Limp Bizkit are one of the biggest bands from the late 90s to early 2000s. Whilst other groups have linked hip-hop with rock or metal before, no one had done it quite like Limp Bizkit. In this video, we're going to look at the 3 things that make Limp Bizkit, and how you can take these ideas and apply them to your own music. First thing we need to do is zoom out. Music is all about context, so if we look at the bigger picture stuff, we can more easily understand the smaller details. When you listen to Limp Bizkit, what do you think the most important elements are? For me, first and most importantly, it's the attitude. They're not trying to sound pretty or nice or friendly. They're trying to convey angst in whatever ugly way it may manifest. This attitude is most obviously conveyed through the vocals, but the rest of the band helps to support this as well. The next most important thing to me is the hip-hop groove that underpins most of their music. And after that, it's all about the riffs. We'll look at all these in greater depth as we go through the video, but for now, we need to maintain some distance from the details. Most music can be broken down to melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone. If we look at different genres, we get different ratios of these elements. For a massive oversimplification, jazz is tied to harmony, metal is tied to rhythm, and pop is tied to melody. On the other hand, hip-hop is tied predominantly to rhythm and tone. It's built with a repeating drum groove that has some slight variations. Now add a rapper with a message. These are rhythmic instruments and they're making up more than 80% of the music. The remaining 20% is samples or instruments. Melody and harmony take a back seat while rhythm and tone are driving this lowrider down the streets of Compton. To me, this approach to songwriting is very similar to Limp Bizkit. The vocals are front and center, shoving their message down your throat. The drum groove provides a foundation for the track, and the rest is icing on the cake. But this is where we can see the biggest point of difference, because instead of the instruments being supporting and background elements, we have actual riffs that command the attention like a normal metal guitar would. So what I'm saying is that Limp Bizkit are basically hip-hop with metal guitars. Let's see what the comment section has to say about that. So with that, we've covered the overarching themes. Let's move on to some more specific detail. I want to start by looking at the groove. I see the groove as the foundation that everything else ties to. In hip hop, the groove could come from anywhere. It doesn't matter whether it came from jazz, funk, soul, or whatever other genre they found the loop from. All that mattered was that it was groovy. These grooves had to have a danceable element to them. A regular rock beat wouldn't qualify because sure, it sounds like a beat, but it doesn't make you want to dance. Bringing this to Limp Bizkit, let's look at a couple of drum beats from a few songs. Danceable? I think so. The best way to learn how to create drum beats like this would be to look to the same inspirations that hip-hop looked towards. Funk and soul are amazing genres that will give you all you need to know on this topic. So, borrow, copy, steal, and transform these beats until you get a feel for it in a metal context. Moving on to riffs, this needs a bit of attention to make sure we're getting it right. To be honest, I don't know what Wes Borland wrote versus what Sam Rivers wrote. So if Sam wrote the majority of these riffs and Wes expanded on them in his own way, then Sam, I'm sorry. But for now, I'm going to attribute all riff writing to Wes because that's what everyone else does, even if it's inaccurate. The riffs in Limp Bizkit play a unique role for metal riffs. They strike a fantastic balance between simplicity and vibe, but they don't get in the way of the more important elements. There are 2 considerations for Limp Bizkit riffs. The first and most important is that the riffs enhance the groove. Let's look at Rollin' for a sec. Does that sound like it's working with or against the groove? What this means to me is that Wes knew he had a pretty specific role to fill. The most important parts of this music are the groove and the singing. How can you fit a unique and powerful riff into that music without ruining it? You enhance it. The second aspect is Wes's creativity. Nearly every guitar idea I heard in their music was played in a unique way. The riff in Rollin' that we just heard cannot be played without heaps of dive bombs littering the music. Nookie is played on a 4-string guitar that's lowest note is equal to the lowest note on an 8-string. Hot Dog would not work without the buttloads of delay that it uses. It would have been really easy to not include those little bits of ear candy in everything he plays, but it's there. It's a way of creating an extra layer of interest to enhance the song. And whilst it may seem like a small detail, these are the type of things that can have a huge impact on the overall perception of the band. It allows the nerds to geek out about the tiny details that they can then go and recreate. And for people who aren't music nerds like us, it creates a new texture and sound that they haven't heard before. If you take any simple idea and play around with it in many different ways, you will come up with loads of unique and quirky variations. Any type of filter, effect, articulation, or variation you can imagine should be tested. The only thing to remember is these ideas should support the groove, not distract from it. Now, the final piece of the puzzle is the vocals. Let's get into that. Even though the vocals are the most important part of Limp Bizkit, I've left these to last because rappers will most often write to a groove. If the riff is an extension of the groove, it becomes a sonic palette to write to. But if we write in this style of vocals first, it can actually be quite difficult to write music to it. One of the underlying characteristics of the vocals for Limp Bizkit is that it's conversational. You're not using complicated phrases or painting poetic portraits with your lyrics. You're trying to capture those complicated, angsty teen feelings of being an outcast. It's important in this way to speak the language of your audience. Keep it simple, keep it clear, and keep it focused on the attitude of the message. If you lose sight of that or try to overcomplicate the ideas, you're going to disconnect from your listener. I mentioned at the start of the video that the attitude and message is the most important part of this music. This is where the attitude and message have their place to shine. Lean into whatever attitude you're trying to display here. Don't be afraid of making bad sounds. It won't sound pretty if you're screaming at someone to back the fuck up. But it's the fact that it sounds ugly that makes people believe it. Lean into that. One of the most important things you can remember in music is emotions should be felt, not intellectualized. By leaning into the emotion, you're displaying it. People feel it. If you choose to protect yourself or your audience from that emotion, then people won't believe it. So before we dive into how to apply this to your own music, we quickly need to go break stuff. The song My Way breaks all the guidelines and rules I've mentioned so far. It has melody and harmony as the most important aspects of the song. There is little rapping, but the drum groove is danceable. And I love that this song brings some self-awareness as well. The lyric, "Check out my melody," which is at the start of the song, is showing that all that we have discussed in this video are stylistic choices. Now, I don't know if they were told that their music isn't melodic, so they wrote a banger that is melodic to shut that guy up, or they wanted to try something different, so they wrote this. But who cares? They did it and it's awesome. The reason why I bring this up is I think it's really important to break any habits that you might develop. It's never clear how these habits might limit your creativity, but it's always useful to try new stuff because you will simply get better. So if you're writing a Limp Bizkit song, what should you do? For me personally, I would start by identifying a situation, attitude, or emotion that I want to underpin the song. You can choose just one of these or pair them together to create a little song triangle to move from if you want to. Like, you were cheated on, so you're feeling reckless because you're pissed off. Being Limp Bizkit, I would highly recommend choosing a high energy state rather than a low energy state. If you're choosing disheartened as your emotion, you're gonna have a hard time aligning that with the high energy music of Limp Bizkit. Now, once you've picked the attitude, I would move to the drum groove. This is the foundation that underpins pretty much everything else. Aim for something like hip hop, where it's simple, repeatable, but also has a groovy or danceable element to it. Once you have a drum groove established, write the riff. As mentioned, start with a basic idea and go and get creative. Try different effects, tones, articulations, or any way that you can spice up the idea. If you simply spend 30 minutes playing the one riff over and over in new ways, trying out weird variations or atypical approaches, you're gonna end up with a handful of usable ideas. Then let the vocals bring it all together. Now, because the vocals and attitude are the most important thing, why on earth would I want to do them last? Rap vocals take the role of a rhythmic instrument in music. Once you've got a suitable backing track, adding another rhythm over the top is usually quite easy. But as I mentioned, if you try to bring the rap in before the groove or the riff, you may have a really hard time creating suitable music to support the vocals because there's little to no space left. In my last few videos, I've looked at a whole bunch of nu metal bands in an effort to answer the question, what makes nu metal nu metal? Limp Bizkit is the last band that I wanted to look at before making a video about how to write a nu metal song, which is here. somewhere. If that's not up yet, check out the System of a Down video.